You're listening to the Zen of Dog Ownership podcast, where we teach you everything you need to know about dog ownership. I'm your host, Turk Akbay. My goal is to bring you the best real-life knowledge to help you be the owner your dog deserves. Let's do it. Boom. Hi, hon.
Hi.
What's happening? I haven't seen you in 2 minutes.
Life is good. Life is good.
Right on. What are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about children and dogs.
That's exciting.
Yeah. I think it's something that so many people ask about, whether they have kids first or dogs first. It's kind of like, what do we do? So I think this will be super helpful to lots of people.
So I think there are lots of benefits for having dogs for children, so we can explore from that perspective.
Absolutely.
I think, first of all, the most important part is when a child is growing up with a dog, they probably learn companionship, they understand the concept of responsibility. Often, especially if the child is old enough, they get to play with the dog. They're running around. And I know I have a lesson later on this week with Sophia.
Aww.
She's
sweet.
Just turned 10 or 7, 8. She turned 8. And she's walking her dog and running around and dancing with the dog, playing, doing things for the dog. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think too that builds in kids a lot of pride and confidence in themselves.
Yeah, you're right.
And they're able to take care of a dog or be responsible. Like, I think that is a great confidence builder. Of course, every child is different, so everybody always do what's best for your family, but yes, in general.
Yeah, I think you're right, especially from the responsibility. I was reading a self-help book, and the author was talking about kids grow up more balanced when their parents show them or give them opportunities for them to be responsible for things.
Right.
So they feel trusted. They feel like grown-ups. So that would really counterbalance of kids' inadequacies of not being able to do things. So
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The other thing I was thinking is useful, and we mentioned this to our customers, part of the sales pitch, is because when a child is exposed to a dog, they're kind of learning about boundaries. So as they get older, I think they're more self-controlled and they're less inclined for peer pressure from, crappy situations. Because once they have a dog, they kind of understand how to communicate with another being. I think that's
really very true. Yeah. So really great opportunities all around. But what I heard in that was just learning even social skills, kind of learning how to be with other people for sure. That's cool. I like that. And of course, empathy, whenever I think being able to cuddle with a dog, pet a dog, just kind of being that sweet, those loving moments that we have with our dogs. I think it's so, so adorable. Obviously, we see lots of pictures and videos on Instagram of that, but just how sweet and adorable that is that kids really get to experience that with another animal.
Yeah. I know, again, I really wanted to have a dog. This was before I get I had dog phobia.
Right.
But yeah, it does. I can see all those great things. So if you have kids and your kids want a dog, get a dog. Is that what we're saying?
I think that's what we're saying.
Yeah. Now,
also,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Well,
of course, this could go really ugly, or it could go really the other way with this selection of the wrong dog.
Of course, we have to choose the right dog for your family, for sure.
Yeah. Well, we had a lot of customers who do call us because they get a dog, and dog is now annoying the child, attacking the child, doing all kind of stuff. And
right.
That's the purpose of this particular episode that we're recording to make sure that dog-child combination is not disastrous for the child. And of course, when that experience is disastrous, and then dog is the one who goes away. People don't take their kids to shelters. So,
Absolutely.
and so I think we can definitely provide some assistance on that front.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can't help but think, before we get on that subject, of Benjamin, our nephew, how just adorable he was with all of our dogs. And it really does depend on the dog's personality and how much they like, especially when Benjamin was, 1 or 2, just starting to walk and play and run and tug and all those things, how Zili, our Vishla, was so patient and loving. And we knew that. And then how 7 really wasn't super keen on little tiny people pulling at his tail and ears, so you do have to, manage that. And then Jimbe, that was our Ridgeback. He was just along for the ride, bless his heart. He was just like, oh, this is what's happening.
Yeah. And 7 was when we got 7 from shelter, he's actually was, he had spent a year in a shelter for biting somebody's kid. So somebody who was pregnant or they get a baby, then they get a puppy. This happens a lot. It's like the old school encyclopedia. People will have a kid and then they go, oh, we need a dog. I guess they don't have enough stress. And 7 had bitten a child, so they took the dog to shelter, blah, blah. Long story short, he ended up with us. But yes, so if you have an existing child, or if you're thinking about getting a dog that's going to live with a child, it's really important to consider the breed, size of the dog, energy level, and a whole bunch of things that if we think ahead of time, it'll make life much easier. I mean, how many times do we hear people who have like 2 or 3 children and then they have a border collie or Australian shepherd and then they say, hey, my dog is nipping at my kids and we can't have this.
Right. The dogs are hurting the actual children. Absolutely. Well, let's start because there's two level or avenues to go down. One is if you already have children and then you want to bring a dog in, and then another one is if you already have a dog and then you're having a baby. So should we start with maybe already having children?
Yeah, that's easy.
Okay. Yep. Let's do that.
Breed is important. So size of the dog, size of the adult dog is really important because obviously regardless of what size of your child, dog is going to grow exponentially in the same time frame in the next first 2 years of dog's life. Breed is important if they're inclined to be more protective, if they're inclined bigger, if they're traditionally not liking children kind of breeds. People should consider the breed of the dog when they have a child. That's making sure they're going to be adaptable. They're going to enjoy each other. Our Vishla, she was really cool dog. And then she was really compassionate towards Benjamin. And she's like, yeah, I don't mind this. So that's a good thing. So it's important for people when they're looking for a dog with their children, with an existing children, they should definitely search and make sure that the breed is compatible with having young children.
Should we talk about any certain breeds in particular or...
So that's a little bit tricky, right? Because
I know it really is.
Within the breed, there are certain personalities of dogs, but dog's personality, I think, is a lot more important than the breed.
Absolutely. And if you adopt a dog that is a little bit older, you can kind of see that personality, kind of how it is when you bring the dog home. And how obviously, I always say every situation is so individual. Always seek guidance from someone, even before you need it. I know we've helped people discern which dog would be the best for them. So I always say, ask a professional for sure. I was also thinking just the age of the children, like we were talking about Benjamin when he was really little. I mean, it's just so important. How much time do you have? If you're getting a puppy and you have a 2-year-old, you got to really be able to have a good amount of time to watch both, because the two-year-old is likely to pull the tail, pull the ear, super fascinated with the dog. And if they're an older dog that you've adopted, they're a little more set in their ways, as opposed to if you have a puppy that, wants to be just as playful. So it's just
Yeah.
something to consider.
So I think let's talk about the dog's perspective as it's for the children. So that will be helpful. We'll answer all those. But I think one thing I forgot to talk about is the having a dog and then a new baby is coming.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So let's do that, and so we can close that loop, and then we'll go from the dog's perspective of children. So if you have an existing dog, and we get this often, people will call us, and sometimes what happens is as soon as pregnancy hits, dogs start acting in a funny way. If a dog is in tune with their owners, and it's one of those caring dogs, they can actually pick up on the human's changes really subtly. If you remember, sometimes we told people, it's like, your dog is acting like you're pregnant. And they're like, no, we don't think we're pregnant. And then a month later or a few weeks later, they said, we are pregnant.
I remember that. That was so.
Yeah.
I know you've suggested to people not letting the dog play with the little baby's blankets or toys or anything like that. What was the reason for that?
So this is for the dogs to have boundaries, because dogs think in terms of natural way, meaning the survival of the fittest. So once your dog is looking at a baby, like before 2 years, and then they don't really recognize or even respect what they are. Mm-hmm. So we want dog to get used to the baby smell. So it's important for baby to those baby wraps and things people use for their baby, so dog can smell that. But we don't offer these things to the dog for the dog to shake and really kind of take ownership of it, so they can create.
Dog could smell the blanket, but don't let it play or be rough with it. That's what you mean. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I always think too, with obviously when you have a new baby, time is not there, I understand. But I think if paying some one-on-one, as even if it's just a moment of petting your dog one-on-one, giving that dog some attention one-on-one, I think is helpful for the dog, just to kind of feel a little more easeful and still a part of the family. Because I know it can be very easy to just kind of ignore the dog, because life has just gotten super, super busy and crazy. And I'm not saying, full on attention, but just even a little love and petting to let the dog know, hey, you're still important too.
Yeah. So here's a pro tip. This is a homework that we give to our expectant moms and dads too, like whoever's expecting a new baby, is have a routine before the child gets in that you do with your dog every day. And it's almost like an OCD that I say, because when I tell that to people, they usually say, I walk my dog. And I go, well, this needs to be something that you and your dog do. And if it's raining, if it's snowing or whatever, you may not necessarily walk your dog. But if you go, every morning at 8:00 for 2 minutes, I'm going to just pet my dog. And just that routine will be very helpful for your dog. And this is especially true if this is the first baby, because if it's a first baby, it usually means first grandbaby. And then the house becomes an absolute madhouse. And if your dog knows that's like, and they don't know time, but if they go, okay, I'm going to do this every day, that routine becomes very helpful for your dog's psyche.
Gotcha. That's very cool. Very cool. Well, let's move on to the dog's perspective.
So if you have pre-puberty kids in your home, that makes a difference for your dog. We deal with this all the time. People say, oh, my dog is great, 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 except with my kids. Will be more disrespectful, more bumping into them, more jumping on. And then people assume it's because dad and mom are bigger people, not because of your size, because of your smell that makes it different. So when dog look at you and More importantly, when your dog smells you and then they smell your 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old baby, when they smell it, they smell differently. And then therefore they don't think these are smaller human beings. They say, oh, I wonder what this thing is. So this is something that is critical and very important for humans to understand. When your dog looks at your kid, they don't see it as your children. They see them as a separate being that is related but not identical.
And in that, is there anything else we need to know? I guess what I think would be helpful is to move on to like the behaviors and body language
Yeah.
that dogs have around children that might be different than adults.
Yeah. So once the dog recognizes the human child as a different animal, so now it goes into survival of the fittest. So I'm stronger, I'm smarter, I can eat this thing, and therefore I should be in charge. Under age 8 and 9, when we're working with clients, we always try to work with the children before or a little after working with the families for this reason, so the dog learns to respect the child. Because
right. I think that's so good.
Maturity of your child is what makes a difference. What I know from my experience, age 8 and older is really ideal age for children to have dogs.
To be responsible, to have the responsibility.
Responsible and being able to understand. Remember, we were telling Benjamin, like, don't pull on Seven's tail or don't do this to Seven. And some things Zilli was tolerating, but Seven was like, brr, keep this child away from me.
Right. And that's a typical, it makes me think of when a dog does kind of give that low grumble or growl, most puppies will retreat and go, oh, okay, like, don't do that. And a lot of times little kids just don't know what that means. I mean, unless there's been a snap already or something, but typically little kids, and we're not saying if you have a 1 or 2 or even a baby that you shouldn't get a dog. It's just if you're wanting your kid to have some responsibility, 8 or older, it seems to be a really nice age for dogs, or it's just a different, hire a trainer. That's what I say.
Yeah. Under 8, hire a trainer. I mean, hire a trainer anyway, but
right.
If you have children that are under 8, it'll make your life so much easier. When you see your dog moving away from a child who's playing, it's important for you to tell the child, breaks, kid, because now your dog is retrieving, or your dog retreating, or your dog is moving away from what's unwanted. So once that happens, your dog needs break from the child. You can use a crate to crate the child, or if not, crate the dog, so your dog can have some space. You can create some boundary between your child and the dog and give your dog an out. Because if your dog is cornered, and if the child is annoying the child, and of course, if a young child does not understand the signs of curling of the lip, tucking of the tail, arching of the back, freezing, turning their head to side, trying to avoid the situation, once dog sends all these signs and being ignored, well, dog is going to have to growl, or dog is going to have to snap, dog is going to have to do something to create some space from this annoying little thing his humans are thrust upon.
Right. So really respecting a dog's boundaries as well.
Yes.
Right. And noticing, just as the adults, be responsible for noticing the body language of our dogs to say, oh, they need a break. I remember with Jimbei, he was a little more high-strung or anxious dog. And I remember him often, we'd like, okay, he's ready for a break. Like he loved Benjamin, but he also really wanted that space too. He's like, all right, that was fun. Let's take a break now.
Yeah, and that also shows your dog that you care for them, and this will increase their bond with you. They're like, oh yeah, my human is taking care of me. So they appreciate that.
It's so true. So true. And that kind of leads into like just understanding our dog's stress or fear around children. Like kind of what does that look like?
Yeah. So, thanks for bringing that up, because some dogs are afraid of children. So,
Right.
and we did an episode about socialization, and we talked about that, and I can put a link at the bottom in the show notes. But if dogs are not exposed to it, like imagine you have a 6-year-old and now there's a child in the house, like 6-year-old dog and
Right.
a child. They're like, what the hell is going on? On
Mhm.
top of that, the power structure, because it changes, so dogs really cannot understand why would their leader, the humans, would yield to such weakling. So this creates a little bit unknown, and not being exposed to this could lead into fear in the dog's mind. So some of the things that I mentioned already, dogs wanted to clear the room the child is in. This is a clear indication your dog is telling you, I need my space. A dog that is maybe physically sitting next to the dog or lying down, because sometimes people put the playpen next to the dog's bed and things, and these are important for socialization. But when your dog is literally looking away from the child, like even with their physically, they may be close, but their head is as far away from the child as possible or looking away. Arching of the back or tucking their tail under them, these are signs of your dog being stressful. Another
Mm,
thing that you'll notice, if your dog is always licking their lips around the child, this is like a tongue flick.
mm,
It's usually a sign of a social anxiety with your dog. So you'll see it if your dog is constantly not licking the child, but licking their lips around the child. This is also a sign of increased stress on your dog. That
mhm.
means timeout, timeout from the child or timeout from the dog. Dog needs their own space.
Right. Okay. That's super helpful. And we kind of touched on it, but like, safety, just kind of safety measures for children and dogs.
Yeah.
And we did talk about obviously supervising, you know, I think that's common sense for most, but making sure. But I think also even when kids get older, really depending on their personality, sometimes kids can pick on dogs or, like we really need to, or I remember it's really sad, but a family who let their kids kind of kick at the kennel of the dog that the dog was in, and it made me sad for the dog, but like really understanding appropriate behaviors for kids and for dogs.
They call me for crazy Weimaraner. So we go to this house, lady is there, dog's in a kennel, and they have 3 kids. And these kids were slamming and kicking onto the kennel. And then the lady was like, this dog is crazy. And I said, is this normal? And I wasn't being funny. I was just saying, is this normal situation in your house? Because it didn't look normal to me, allowing kids to kick a crate while the dog is in it. And she's like, yeah, this is, she's like, my kids are crazy. And I'm like, okay, but what's your expectation from this dog? And she said, well, no matter what my kids do, a dog should be okay. That's not a healthy environment for a dog to be caged up in a crate. And while children are slamming their hands and yelling at the dog, and dog to be normal. So common sense, most people have, of course, is like, don't allow your kids to harass your dog, and
Right.
or don't expect your dog not to react to such harassments.
Right.
But
Right.
I
That's true.
think that's an abnormal situation.
That was certainly an extreme situation, but it did
Yeah.
become a really sweet pet companion for your
Yeah.
sister.
So the moving forward, we told them we couldn't work with such clients, but if they wanted to get rid of the dog, they should contact us. And a few weeks later, the lady is like, no, we can't handle this dog. Come and take it. And then that dog lived happily for many,
Many,
many years. Many,
yeah,
many years.
in our
Yeah.
family. So that was really fun. Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah.
but let's talk about the kids and dogs. Kids and dogs. So
Yep.
I think we covered enough about age of the children is important. You got to be able to control your dog. Control your child. If you can't control your child, that's you're putting your dog to an unfair disadvantage, and you're putting that child into an unfair danger. It's important for us to teach our children how to interact with dogs. It's amazing how often while we're in a lesson in something, people will let their kid run up to us. And even if the dog is in a muzzle and they're like, oh, it's okay, we have a dog. My kid loves dogs. Well, your kids may like dogs, but that dog may not like children. I love it when people teach their kid to ask for permission. So this sometimes happens. Kid will run up to us and say, can I pet your dog? And then before they get the answer of yes or no, they immediately go to the dog.
Right.
Please teach your children. Ask for permission and wait for the answer.
Right. I think Benjamin's really good at that.
He is.
Our star nephew. He's a genius, but
it's all for Benjamin.
Yes. And I do want to say, you said control your child, and for me, that's a pretty strong word, but I think what I hear is like really be able to talk or work with your child and the dog. So I just want to throw that in there.
Yes, I sounded like a person without a child. So when I said control your child, I meant being able to guide your children into interacting with dogs.
Yes.
Other thing that I want to mention, and this is normal, kids are loving beings. Like I love having kids. And their natural inclination is to hug.
Mm-hmm.
And for a dog, that's a dominating behavior. So when your child is super loving and they want to really hug a dog, from a dog's perspective, it's interpreting this as this thing is trying to hump me, or this thing is trying to dominate me. So it's important for us to teach our children, especially those loving, huggy children that loves to hug things, to actually respect the dog. So you, the parent, or you, the dog owner, you can actually guide this interaction of slowing the child down a little bit and giving a dog an opportunity to get adjusted, because dogs need a little bit of adjustment to size up. Is this thing is trying to choke me, or am I being loving? Because they don't have the same point of reference we humans have to children hugging, being, oh, that's lovely.
So is there an appropriate, is it more that the dog needs time before kind of going in for the hug?
Yes. So what I've seen over the time when we, with the group lessons and things like that, I tell the children, start with the end of the dog that doesn't have teeth. So instead of immediately going to the face, they can just pet the dog a little bit on their back or on their side. So the dog will inevitably is going to look to see what's happening, usually will sniff, will adjust their body. So this takes about maybe 5 to 10 seconds. And when that happens, then the dog is like, hey, most dogs like children. Like most dogs actually appreciate the love and pure bundle of joyness the kids are demonstrating for them.
Absolutely.
But when they're 3 or 4 or 6 or 7, now we're getting into the age of kids are experimenting with their own power. Like we saw this with Benjamin. He's like sweet, sweet, sweet. And then he wants to see what he can get away with. How can I jab this dog just a little bit to practice my power? So if you're dealing with kids that are practicing their own power, this is the time for the parents to be more in tune to their dog's body language and start teaching their kids is like, hey, I know what you're trying to do, but the consequence of that is a dog bite. So really, that's the ideal time to teach our dogs about respecting the space and boundaries of our dogs. And that's how we started this segment about dogs understanding boundaries and social skills. While we don't want our kids to assume that whatever they do is going to be perfect, they're never going to have boundaries, because they must. And this will be the good opportunity for them to learn about that boundaries, their own as well as dogs.
Right. And I think that moves into, really incorporating our dogs into just our family activities. And I'll say just the other day, a couple of days ago, I was with my sisters and Benjamin, and we went on a walk. And one of my sisters, actually, both of her dogs came, and Abby, who they've both been well trained. So they were running off leash. And I'm telling you, Benjamin and Abby's she's probably, I don't know if she's 15 pounds, something like that. She might be a little less, but they had the best time. We went for like a little hike walk along the greenway, and they ran and played, and it was just the most beautiful thing. I mean, Benjamin, he had so much fun. He was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like," he didn't really want to come with us because it was a walk. He's like, "Oh, that sounds boring." But then they got to run and play, and it was just the cutest and sweetest thing. And it really is a result of having a well-trained dog as well as a little human who knew how, like, the appropriate behavior with dogs. So really being able to take the dogs and, like, a little kid, it was so much fun. And he had a blast.
Yeah, you're right. So we often talk about, well, this episode, we're talking about a lot of the dangers and things, but that's essentially the foul lines or the issues. But once the child understands how to behave around dogs, and once dog understand that this child is actually, they like to play together,
Right.
that's just beautiful. It really
So much
is
fun.
amazing. Remember, we had Benjamin running around with all the other dogs in the schoolyard
Just
the other
the other
day.
day.
Yeah, it's the best thing for him. It's best thing for dogs too.
Right.
They like to chase, and often kids are zigging and zagging. They actually do emulate how the dogs play. So it's beautiful to watch a child
It
and a
really
dog just
is.
running and chasing each other. They take
Absolutely.
turns. It was great. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely. And I was thinking too, a lot of people love to take their dogs to like the soccer matches that their kids are playing in, or whatever activity that they're doing. It could be even just going out to dinner or lunch or whatever. So that's something too, where just really incorporating the dogs into these different family activities.
Yes, that's what we preach. We want you to integrate your dog into your life. And
Hmm.
I think when we're training dogs, we always integrate children into the mix. And
Right.
and what I mean by that is more than just in your living room teaching your kid to teach your dog a sit command. Almost all our clients who have children, their kids are the one who teach the dogs the sits and rollovers and all these things. They spend time. Also, on top of that, integrate on how to walk the dog with your child, how your dog should act, and make your children give some commands so your dog is respecting that authority. Integrate your children training into your dog training and your dog training into your child training. Both of
Right.
those will go hand in hand.
Right. And it does build confidence in both the child and the dog, which is just
Yes.
such a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah.
I
I
love it.
think what you were saying is really important and good to take your dog to your kids' soccer, whatever sports that they're doing, like dogs being part of it. So dog is actually seeing it, and then actually dog is part of it.
Right. Because they're also going to be, if they're at a soccer match and the kids playing, there's going to be other kids around. So the dog is going to have the opportunity to meet other kids and kind of in different environments.
Yes, it's critical for dog and children's well-being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we really did touch on this, but just the bond between the children and dogs that happens when they are, when you do have a well-balanced dog, well-trained dog, and then a child that respects the boundaries of the dog. It's just the bond that they create. It's just so sweet.
It is. And also, and I want to mention this, of course, this is a shameless plug for us or other dog trainers.
Sure.
When you have a dog trainer that's actually helping you, training your dog and your child, it makes life so much easier for you. And then, of course, this also creates that balance between your child and your dog. And then it really makes this relationship gel well. And sometimes children are afraid of dogs.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
That's true.
especially if you have a young child and you have a physical dog, the Vishta, it's just jumping on, bumping and doing all these things. And your child, early children are not really understanding. They assume this dog doesn't like them, or they assume dog is trying to hurt them. And none of those are true. Dog is just being a dog. And so that you want to identify, you want to help your children have a good relationship in this process as well. So
Right.
it goes, I think dog training and children go hand in hand.
It really does. It really does. Cool.
Yeah. What else? Are we good?
Yeah, I think this was really, really helpful. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. I think this came from, somewhere social media. Someone wanted to see
Right.
children and dogs. It's
Absolutely.
springtime. And if
Yeah.
you have any show ideas, dear listener, please reach out to us, message us, and we'd love to, hear from you, so we know what's interesting to you, so we can create more episodes that's relevant rather than guessing what you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is great. Thanks so much for being part of it. I'm Turk Akbay.
I'm Jill Akbay.
This is Zen of Dog Ownership Podcast. We create this for you. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.